My name is David Dice. I'm the director of Montgomery County's Department of General Services in Montgomery County, Maryland. My office right now is located in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Nice office.
I'd like to say we own it, but we don't. This is a leased space. County government headquarters is in the seat of government in Rockville, Maryland.
I understand. I went to the wrong office. Mr. Information. Yeah.
And we'll be back in Rockville by the end of the summer as we get out of this leased building.
Oh, really? In the summer? So I could have waited, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we could be doing this in August in Rockville. That's right.
Well, I mean, actually, to me, I don't know, you know my work about, government grants and programs and stuff like that, and everybody wants to talk to me about grants and grants and grants. And I think the biggest deal in government is not grants, it's contracts.
It is contracts, that's right.
Grants, if you get one, it's only one, and then, what are you going to do next year and everything. But to me, a contract, that's the name of the game of the government.
It is. Grants usually are relatively, particularly on the municipal level, local government, are small dollars. We're talking $5,000, $3,000, maybe a $20,000 grant every now and then, but it's a fixed period. It's 1 year. It's one and done. Some grants are renewed, but they're also very subject to the vagaries of the economy. And currently, as you know, in these economic times, if you're going to have to cut back on some things, grants becomes a real potential resource. You're right. Contracts are a great avenue particularly for small businesses that are interested in getting established. I often tell small businesses, and Montgomery County is a very active small business program. But I tell small businesses, we are not the answer to your success, but we are a means by which you can build success. If you've contracted with the government, that's a pretty good item on your resume as a company. Yeah.
But also, it seems, to me, a lot of times, as my sister does contracting with the government, mostly federal and some other, way in the middle of Virginia, and she puts frames on pictures. Yeah, she does like $1 million out of her garage. Yeah,
really.
Stuff.
Good for her. Yeah, that's great.
It is. A lot of it could be like, particularly with federal government, like going elephant hunting, man. If you bag one of those things,
well, a lot of it
for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the nature of the contract. I'll give you a great example. We contract with a local small business here for providing novelty items, cups, mugs, towels, and things of that sort.
Wow.
And this was a business that actually was instrumental in helping us change some of our small business regulations and policies. They approached me and they said, because we were buying novelties from major national companies that send catalogs out. And government does what government does, just like you do and I do. Why do you use the service station you use? Why do you go to the dentist that you go to? Because you like them and you just kind of get used to them. Well, since I'm not spending my money, I'm spending your money. I'm spending the public's money.
Remember that.
That's right. We're very conscious of the fact that it's not our money we're spending, so we have an obligation to make sure we're spending it fairly. Well, this company approached me and said, look, I'm a local business. I pay taxes in the county. Why can't you use us? And we had some rules and regs that kind of made that more difficult. So as a result of their approaching me, I went to change those rules and waive some regulations in order to make competition more even. And we started contracting with this company, and we do quite a lot of business now, buying mugs. The coffee mug on my desk was from a local small business, printing up mugs and handouts, trinkets, things like that. Great example. They're doing a lot of business in small dollar increments. Most governments have a small purchase threshold.
Which means
that under a certain dollar level, departments can go out and find sources to satisfy those needs without a lot of competition.
I see.
In Montgomery County, for instance, $5,000. If it's under $5,000, again, novelties. Right. If I need some coffee mugs done for a special event, if I need T-shirts done for a recreation event or something like that, I can go to a local business. If it's under $5,000, I can work out, negotiate a contract, and cut a purchase order with them. And they get the business.
You don't have to.
Very much so. Yeah.
Get 10 bids and all this.
That's exactly right. And in fact, local businesses, small businesses, are much more competitive and much more responsive. I love working with small. Well, the rap on small businesses is that they're either too small to address our needs, or they're not responsive. I find the opposite to be absolutely the case. So.
Because you hate dealing with those big bureaucracies of big businesses.
Well, it's a great point. The people are always pointing fingers at the government.
Right.
You know, saying, it's good enough for government, and government's cumbersome. You know, it's my experience that the bigger a company is, they get wrapped up in the same procedures and layers. It's just the same thing.
I started this 30 years ago. I was downtown and working with big Fortune 500 companies to get stuff from government agencies. I didn't see the difference. My services, they're just as bureaucratic.
It is the same. I have a number of colleagues that do contracting in the private sector in the Washington, D.C. area, and they're as wrapped up in policies and bureaucracies as we are.
Well, so if, like say at the county level, let's do that. So if you were, because this goes nationwide, so I'm really trying to do is educate people where to go, and what the system is all about. So no matter what, well, let's explain the procedure here in Montgomery County if you're a small business, and then give advice about what to do if you don't have something right. So if you were, say, a computer supply technician or selling tchotchkes or whatever, where would somebody go? I mean,
well, that's a great question. I travel all across the country in Canada, and I've spoken with procurement officials, and I've spoken with business people all across the country. The biggest frustration that businesses have is, who do I talk to? How do I break in?
Right.
And I'm going to clue you in on a secret right now. Government is not prejudicial. Government is not necessarily lazy. Government, as I said earlier, is like you and me. We do what we do because that's the way we've always done it.
Absolutely.
And the biggest challenge that businesses have is making themselves known. And this is a problem that small businesses face because they don't have a lot of resources. Usually the chief of marketing is also the chief of accounting, is also the owner, is also the payroll clerk. And so it's a real hard challenge for them to take time out when they're not selling and making money to market themselves.
Customers get in the way of getting customers.
That's a great way to put it. Every municipality across the country, whether it's state or local government, they all have a small purchase threshold. That varies. In the smaller jurisdictions, it might be $100. It might be $500. Larger municipalities, $5,000 or $10,000. And that threshold is determined by obviously the cash resources of the municipality, but also where they need to focus their attention. I tell small businesses that the best way for them to get in is to focus on, know what that small purchase threshold is. Every governmental body has got regulations that govern what they do. Those purchasing regulations, most of them are online. You can access them and find out what that small purchase threshold is.
How would you find it? I mean,
well, again, go to the government's website, and usually you'll have an access to the purchasing department. In some municipalities where there's not a central purchasing department, I'm talking to the listeners who might be out in the countryside and working with more rural or smaller jurisdictions where the procurement or contracting function might be under the Department of Finance.
Just like a small business.
Could be under the county clerk's office, could be under the mayor's office. And just like a small business. And so if it's not available on the website, call the central number and say, I'd like to find out about your purchasing rules. So
it's not the first time they got that call.
Oh, they get them all the time from entrepreneurs who are not doing what people who are listening to us need to be doing. And just find out what the small thresholds are. That's number one. Find out where's your best niche to focus. Other things that are easily available from government websites or government information offices is what's their budget. Get a copy. Get a copy of the municipality's budget, particularly their capital projects, their IT projects, and all this. The budget is a great tool to show you where the municipality plans on spending its money in the next year.
I see. So you could see what areas maybe are going to increase a lot, and there's more opportunities. Somebody's shrinking.
You bet, absolutely. You're going to see what the current and previous spending was, and what the spending is projected for the next year. If it's a capital or capital funded project, you'll see oftentimes what the spending is projected for the next 5 years, and the schedule of when it's going to be spent. So smart business people need to learn about the government they're trying to sell to.
Learning your customers.
That's exactly right. And the good thing with the government is that's all public information.
Absolutely.
It has to be made available.
Absolutely.
It's not like going to a private client who can
What
choose
are you
what
gonna spend next year?
Right. Well, they're not going to tell you, but the government has to tell you.
Right.
So that information is very available. So look at the budget, look at the capital planning, find out what the rules and regulations are, find out what the small purchase thresholds are. There's usually 3 layers of contracting with the government. There's the small purchase, which is just go do it, and then and then there's usually an informal. They might call it something else. There's usually a threshold at which competitive sealed bids have to take place. And again, that varies. I'll explain that in a second. That varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Smaller, you might have to do competitive sealed bids at $5,000. Here in Montgomery County, and typical for a number of large municipalities, it's either varies between $25,000 and $50,000.
Well, then what's between 5 and 25?
Well, that's usually where, instead of it going through a central procurement function, where there's a competitive sealed process, a formal process, there's a less, it's called an informal process here. Formal, informal, that's difficult, isn't it?
That's government.
Yeah, try and keep it simple so the government can understand it. And that's usually where there's still competitive principles that need to be followed, because once again, it's not my money.
Exactly right.
So we're still following competitive principles, but the time requirements for advertising might be shorter. It might be, in larger municipalities, those might be delegated exclusively to departments to handle on their own instead of going through a central procurement function. And again, it's going to vary. I would love to sit here and say the rules are the same no matter where you go.
But every girl's the same. Huh?
The reality is that I've never heard procurement compared to a girl, but that's interesting. The reality is that it's very fragmented. It's very different. You can what I do here is going to be different than the county right next to me.
But you're saying there's some kind of levels.
There typically are levels. Again, not exempt small purchases, a mid-range of less formal, and then the formal ones, which can begin at either $25,000, $50,000, or $100,000 or more. Right.
So how does someone typically find, hey, who buys my stuff? You know,
Okay, great question.
Who buys the coffee cups?
The one thing that and again, it's the policies of engagement will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think a mistake that most businesses make is that they go to the contracting office and they think the contracting office is buying what I'm selling.
But isn't that, if I wanted to sell, wouldn't they probably say, oh, I'll send you to procurement?
They will. They will. So I'm going to tell you both sides of the equation here. Because if you go to the contracting office, the procurement office, procurement can tell you what the government typically does and what it's doing right now. Procurement doesn't usually know what's about to come until the departments tell them that they need to buy it. The reality is the procurement function buys the stuff, but they don't use the stuff. And they're not thinking 3 months, 12 months down the road about what's going to be needed.
By the time they have to buy, it's a fire drill versus deciding to buy?
Well, in a sense, the procurement function is there to make sure it's done legally, ethically, and consistently. That's what procurement's there to do. But the actual defining of the requirement, what it is I want, and what kind of cups. Am I getting ceramic mugs? Am I getting plastic mugs? Am I getting biodegradable products? What kind of mugs? What I want printed on them? What color? What weight? Handles? 2 handles? Those decisions are being made by the user, by the department. And then they come to procurement and say, we want to have green ceramic mugs with the county logo and our department name on it. And then procurement's job is to go and make sure that that money is spent fairly and equitably, and everyone's got a fair chance at the opportunity. But the decision on the mug itself is usually the department's decision. And so businesses need to reach out to the department.
How do they find what department buying?
Great.
You slipped me these questions.
You're tracking with me. All right, so
at least I'm listening.
There you go. So the challenge now on the business's part is, as I said earlier, who do I talk to? Procurement. Think of the procurement office as like the hub of a wheel. And the spokes of the wheel are the various governmental functions: police, fire, human services, IT, whatever. They all ultimately, their needs, their satisfaction of their requirements go to that hub. So procurement is usually in the unique posture of knowing what all the spokes are doing. Because the spokes don't usually speak to each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Army doesn't speak to the Navy.
Right.
Highways doesn't speak to contract. So the procurement department will usually know who you need to speak to, and that's a big thing. That's a big thing then in contacting procurement.
So that's a good place to start to find out who's
Right.
buying what.
But trying to market to procurement, don't do that.
Okay.
Use procurement as a resource. Look, I'd love to do business with the county.
Right.
Here's a tip for people listening. If you're a business, don't try and market yourself to the procurement people. Just say, I'm a business interested in doing business with the city, county, schools, whatever. I know you're not the person. I'm not here to waste your time.
Sell you on my
I'm not trying to sell you my really sharp blazer here. But I'd like to know who to speak with. Could you tell me who to speak to? Now, that would be a great way to approach procurement. Here's a couple of reactions that you could get.
Right.
You could get a procurement person who says, thank you so much for understanding the frustrations and pressures of my job. Here's the person you should talk to. You could also get a reaction that, send us your information and we'll distribute it, which is basically a polite way of saying, leave me alone.
Right.
Or you could get, well, we have a certain procedure that you need to follow. If there's a procedure that you need to follow, please don't say, I hate procedures. Is there another way I could do this? If there's a procedure, follow the procedure.
I know so many people get so frustrated with the government, they want to change it. If some bureaucrat is following the law to do something, and they expect that bureaucrat to change the law.
That's a great way to put it, because a lot of times, particularly in the procurement functions, it's very specifically laid out in order to ensure that it's done legally, ethically, and fairly. So there are regulations, and if there's not laws and regulations, there are certainly policies and procedures to make sure it's done consistently. Because you don't want me to treat you in a way that is less fair or favorable than I treated the last person. So fairness and consistency is critical. What I see and what I always encourage governments when I speak with them and consult with them to do is you got to make it easy for business. Right. Ultimately, let's be honest, it's in my advantage. It's to my advantage to have as many businesses doing what you do, although I'm not sure there's a lot of people that do what you do, but what you do is critical. What I see and what I always encourage governments when I speak with them and consult with them to do is you got to make it easy for business. Right. Ultimately, let's be honest, it's in my advantage. It's to my advantage to have as many businesses doing what you do, although I'm not sure there's a lot of people that do what you do, but what you do as to increase competition and make sure that I'm getting best products for the best price. So when you make contact with that department, then what you need to do is approach them, understanding that oftentimes the person you're approaching doesn't do this full time. Right. They have a job, but part of their job is also to know what's available and what's out there. Let's say
the procurement person.
Yeah, no, back in the department. Let's say you're the
executive or whatever.
Yeah, you've gotten a reference. If you get the department head's name. Right. Again, deference is very important. Right. You contact the department. I know you're a very busy person. Yes. Is there someone I could speak to? No matter who you're given to, most of the time, they have another job. Let's say they're an engineer or they're a budget analyst or whatever, and you're calling them to market yourself to them. They're going to be focusing on their engineering or their budget work, not focusing on, oh, it's time to meet with a business who wants to make themselves known to me. So understand that they have another job, that they're not there just waiting for your phone call. And so work with them, work with their schedule, and provide that opportunity. Some jurisdictions, we do this, and some of the more progressive jurisdictions are providing means and contact information. For instance, on my website, Montgomery County is a very large county. There are a number of large counties all across the country. I know good governments out in Arizona, California, Oregon, Pennsylvania. Florida, they on their websites, they'll list contacts in the departments. We list, for instance, on our website, all of the contract administrators, anyone who's managing and administering contracts in an official capacity in all
Now,
the
is that
departments.
procurement, or
No,
is
that's out in the departments.
Okay, so that's the end user person.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
In where I work, we have 600 people across the county.
Really?
Well, that's 600 out of 10,000 employees.
I see. 600 that are contract.
That manage contracts out in the number of departments that are across
So
the
they
county.
would be the people
That's who you contact.
I see.
Right.
So
those are the
600
people, and we break them down by the department. So if I'm selling, let's say I'm selling healthcare products, so
Right.
I want to talk to someone in the Health and Human Services. So I can see a listing of here's some people in Health and Human
Right.
Services. I'll contact them.
Right.
Now, this is where procurement can also function as your support. We're here about advocacy. We're advocating business. You're also, and we'll talk about economic development departments in municipalities in a moment, but if you're reaching out to a department and you're getting the stiff arm, the rebuff, I need to know about that. And so you can call the procurement department back and say, I contacted the individual you gave me, and they said never call me again, leave me alone.
I see.
Return to
Wow.
sender.
No kidding.
If that's happening, then you need to let the procurement department know,
Wow,
because that's not a good government practice.
And why? Why? I mean,
Why would that
he's a bit-
occur?
Right. No. I mean, he's a busy executive, and people act like that. I mean, you and I probably do it sometimes.
Sure, absolutely.
But why is it a policy that's bad government? I mean,
Well, because